We continue now at the top of Daf Dalet Amud Aleph and Meseches Beitzah. This is Beitzah Daf 4a. And the previous summon, there was a Beitzah that discussed the case of litra ketzios, which is a litra of dried figs. And the situation was where you're not exactly sure which dried figs you're chayiv to take off meister. Again, this is a chiyav midrabanan. And so Rabbi Eliezer over here says, Rabbi Eliezer says, Roen es ha'elyonos ki'ilu hein prudos, v'hatachtonos malos es ha'elyonos. We look at the upper ones as if they are separated, and we can use the lower ones as part of the bittul of the upper ones. And Rashi over here explains, Roen osan ki'ilu hein prudos, meaning, Imein kan meyo pumin shel heter. Let's say you have a situation here where the mouth of the vessels, meaning the top of the vessels, which is where the suffix is, you don't know the top of which vessel is the dried figs that require taking off meiser. So if you don't have 100 mouths of heter, in which case you could have bittul in 1 in 100. In other words, if you don't have a situation where you have dried figs at the top of 100 vessels in order to be mavatal, the one that you're not sure about, so roin ki'ilu litros shel kol hapumin prudos me'al hapumin umu'uravos b'shel shulayim. You look at it as if those that are at the mouth of the vessel, at the top of the vessel, are all mixed up with everything at the bottom of the vessel. V'nimtzu kulam b'safek hadimu. You can take all of the figs, those within the vessel and those at the top of the vessel, and they can all be part of your suffix. Umitztarfos hatachtonos lahalos es litra shal hapeh, and therefore you can say that you now have bittul tohoelu trumas peiros derabanan mikilim b'halosam. Since truma of peiros is only midrabanan, we can be lenient. In other words, Rabbi Eliezer, this is Rabbi Meir's version of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says you can be lenient over here and count all of the figs, those at the top and those at the bottom, even though the ones at the bottom of the kalim are not actually part of the suffix. And the Beitzah continues. Rabbi Yoshua says, Im yesha meya pumin yalu. If you have there 100 mouths, meaning 100 again tops of the vessels of heter, so then you could do bittul. V'im lav, and if not, hapumin asur, and then the tops of every vessel is asur. V'hashulayim mutar, but the bottom of each vessel, that's going to be mutar. And Rashi over here says, Rabbi Yoshua Omer, Yesha meya pumin shel heter levad pumin shel iser. If you have 100 tops of the vessels that are heter, besides the one that's of iser, so malinosan be'echarumeya, then you have a situation of bittul. You can say it's bittul in 1 in 100. V'imlav, and if not, tapumin asur, and then the tops, the mouths of all the vessels are going to be asur. All of the dried figs that are over there are going to be asur. Vein hashulayim moilin levatel hapumin. You can't use any figs in the bottom of the vessels to be levatel those at the top. Hoel ve'enam b'safek hatimu, because those were never in doubt in the first place. That's not part of your suffix. You can only use the figs that are part of your suffix. And the Beitzah continues. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, that Rabbi Eliezer says, again, it's a machlokas Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. What is the machlokas Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua? So Rabbi Yehuda says that Rabbi Eliezer says, Im yesha meya pumin yalu. If you have again 100 mouths of the vessels, then you can do bittul. This is the same opinion that we just had in Rabbi Yoshua according to Rabbi Meir. That's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion according to Rabbi Yehuda. V'im lav hapumin asur, and if not, the mouths are going to be asur v'hashulayim mutarin, and the dried figs at the bottom of the vessels are going to be mutar. Rabbi Yoshua, in this version, in Rabbi Yehuda's version, Rabbi Yoshua is even stricter. Rabbi Yoshua says, Afilu yesham shalosh meos pumin. Even if you have 300 mouths of the vessels, lo yalu, you still can't do bittul in such a situation. Rashi over here says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo nechliku Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, elakei nechliku Rabbi Eliezer Omer. The following is really the machlokas Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua Omer, Afilu yesham shalosh meos pumin v'kulan b'chlal hasafik. Even if you have 300 mouths of the vessels that are all part of your doubt, Ein malinis hayachid, you're not allowed to use bittul over here. Ho'elu pume hakli davar sheyesh bo minyan, because the tops, the openings of these vessels is considered a davar sheyesh bo minyan. Again, it's something that has a number to it, something that you count. It's chashiv sheyesh bo minyan. Who lo batli, it's not batal. Va'afilu midrabanan, even midrabanan, even by something that's only an iser midrabanan. And that's the whole point to bring this bris over here. We're trying to show you that there's a tana that holds that by a davar sheyesh bo minyan, it's never batal. The brisa continues, darsa be'igol, if he pressed these figs into the circular vessel, ve'enu yodein, he doesn't know be'eze igol darsa, which circular vessel he pressed it, divrei hakol yalu, that everybody agrees you can use bittul. Now that line doesn't make any sense. This was the machlokas the entire time, was whether you can use bittul. So divrei hakol hainu pluksayu, what do you mean everybody agrees? That's the machlokas we just had, right? The exact case we just had is you press the figs into the circular top of the vessel and you don't know exactly where it is. Do you do bittul? So what does this last line mean? And so the Gemara answers, Amar Rapapa says, Hachi Kamer, here's what it means. Darsa be'igol, ve'edu yodeh be'ezamakam igol darsa. Let's say he pressed it into the circular vessel, but he doesn't know in which area of the vessel it was pressed. Ilatzfona, iladroma. He doesn't know if it was the northern part. He doesn't know if it was the southern parts. So divrei hakol yalu. In this particular case, everybody agrees you can use bittul. Rashi over here says, Hachi kamar darsa besocha igol da'achshav einon nikaris. In this case, it's not even nikar. Sharim medubakos, they're all attached. Ve'ena yodeh heichani, you don't even know where it is. In bitzvono shaligol or bidroma, you don't know if it's in the north part of the circular vessel or the southern part. Hoel v'hashda lav bas minyan. At this point, when you press it in that fashion, it's not bas minyan. It's not considered an important item. It's not an item that you count. It's not chashuv. V'lo minkar, and it's not clear. It's not recognizable. So divrei hakol yalu. In this case, everybody agrees it's not a davar shebeminyan. Everybody agrees you can use bittul. Betana de le'el Rabbi Yehuda v'aliv Rabbi Yoshuahi. Rashi finishes off the Tana of the previous summit. The whole point of bringing this is to try to identify the Tana that holds that something that is a davar shebeminyan is not batul. That's going to be Rabbi Yehuda according to Rabbi Yoshua. Again, as we just said, Rabbi Yehuda according to Rabbi Yoshua says a davar shebeminyan is never batul, even when you're dealing with an isser midrabanan. And the Gemara continues. Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says, we'll take a look at Rashi over here. Rav Ashi Amar liolam hadikatani was fake us. We're going back to our original question. The Gemara on the previous Amud was discussing a situation of Beitzah Shenolda, and it said that if you have a suffix, you don't know if the Beitzah was Nolda b'yomtiv, or if it was not Nolda b'yomtiv, it said Sveika Aser. So the Gemara asked, according to the opinions that say that the issue of Beitzah Shenolda is only D'Rabbanan, so why would you say Beitzah Shenolda is Aser? Suffix D'Rabbanan is L'kula. We shouldn't say Suffix L'chumra. So Rav Ashi is now giving another answer to that. That which it says in the Beitzah that the suffix Beitzah Shenolda b'yomtiv is Aser, suffix Yomtiv, suffix Chol Kamar. It's like we originally thought. We're not sure if it was born on Yontiv or born on Chol. With the Kasha Lach, and that which you have a Kasha Rav Yosef or Rav Yitzchak that you asked, according to the Amoraim, Rav Yosef and Rav Yitzchak, who say Safek D'Rabbanan, it's only a Safek D'Rabbanan or L'kula, so therefore you should be lenient. Why are we being strict and saying Usfeika Aser? Hacho as linan l'chumra. Here, the reason why we go l'chumra is Hoel v'yesh l'matir l'machar. Since it's a davar sheyesh l'matir. The Gemara had suggested in the previous Amud that since it's a davar sheyesh l'matir, and you can wait for the next day for Yontiv to be over to eat it, therefore it's not going to be batal. Now Rav Ashi is going to suggest that davar sheyesh l'matir is even a reason to be machmir in a case of a suffix. You don't apply suffix D'Rabbanan l'kula if it's a davar sheyesh l'matir. So again, Rav Ashi says, Liolam Safek Yomtiv Safek Chol. That Beitzah before is talking about you don't know whether the egg was the egg came out on Yontiv or on the weekday. Have a davar sheyesh lo matirin, and it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. V'chol davar sheyesh lo matirin afil b'drabanan lo batel. Anytime you have a davar sheyesh lo matirin, even by a drabanan issue, it's not batel. Rashi over here says afil b'drabanan can go in Beitzah the gezeres peres hanoshon he lo batel b'taruva. So it's not batel like we said earlier. V'chi heichi de b'bitula mechamrinan, and just like we're machmir in terms of bittul, mehai taima b'sveika nami mechamrinan mehai taima. We're going to be machmir the same thing. Davar sheyesh lo matirin is a reason to be machmir by suffix as well, and that's why we say suffix l'chumra in this particular case. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a Beitzah, Cheirim Omer Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, others say in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, Beitzah tochal hi v'ima. When it comes to the case of the egg, it can be eaten, meaning the egg can be eaten, and the mother, the chicken as well, is able to be eaten. Rashi over here says, Beitzah tochal im nolda b'yomtiv, meaning our case. Let's say the Beitzah is nolda b'yomtiv, it's born on Yontiv, it can be eaten and the mother can be eaten. So the Gemara says, B'may askinan, what exactly is the case in this Beitzah? If the case over here is you have a situation of a chicken that was meant to be eaten all along, it's designated to be eaten, so pshita dehivi mashari, it's obvious that it and its mother is permitted. Rashi over here says, kilomar, meaning to say, in bolomar ke Beis Shammai, if the point of this Beitzah is to say that Rabbi Eliezer holds like Beis Shammai, so lishminan Beitzah ima lamali, just tell us the case of Beitzah. What do you need to say the mother for? Pshita the Sharia, obviously the mother is permitted. Nobody disagrees about a chicken that is designated to be eaten, that can be eaten. The whole question is a question of the Beitzah, it's a question of the egg. So just say, we hold like Beis Shammai, say the Beitzah is permitted like Beis Shammai, and not like Beis Hillel. What do you need to mention anything about the Tarnagolas for? And the Gemara continues, Ella b'tarnagolas homedes legadol beitzim. But then what are you going to say? Then you're going to say we're talking about a tarnagolas that's homedes legadol beitzim, that it's really designated to produce the eggs. So then hivi masura. But in that case, it shouldn't be permitted. In that case, we should say that the egg and its mother is actually usur. As Rashi over here says, hivi masura the shamina Rabbi Eliezer dislay muksa, because we already know that Rabbi Eliezer holds of muksa. Tetanan beperak hamevi Rabbi Eliezer Omer Adam ala muksa alma hachana ba. You see that Rabbi Eliezer holds from later on in this Masechet that he holds to the concept of muksa. So it can't be we're talking about a tarnagola. So medes legadol beitzim. So what's going on over here? The Gemara says, Omer Rabbi Zeira says tochal agav ima. What the Beitzah means to say, what Rabbi Eliezer means to say is it can be eaten agav ima, meaning on the basis of its mother. Hey Chidami, what's the case? Amar Abai explains as follows. Kagon shalach chastam. The case over here is that you bought the bird, you bought the chicken stam. You had no designation. Nishchata, so once it is shechted, that shows retroactively that all along it was being prepared to be eaten, and therefore agav imo, you could now have the egg. Lo nishchata, but if it was not shechted, so then it becomes clear that it was really for the production of the eggs, and then you would not be allowed to have the eggs. In other words, the case over here is it wasn't designated for anything, and agav ima, on the basis of what happens to the mother, that's how you can decide whether the beitzah is permitted or not. And the Gemara now gives another answer. Rav Mari Amar, Rav Mari says, Guzma Katani. The entire brisa is really just an exaggeration. Rashi over here says, Ka'adam sharotza lahachzik devar of medaber. Yes, you say something a little extra, you say something more to make your point stronger. The case is it's designated to be eaten. And the whole point of this is Rabbi Eliezer disagrees with Beis Hillel. He goes like Beis Shammai and he says that the egg is actually permitted. And really, you're right. You don't need to mention the mother. You only need to mention the egg. It's just that the Bryce is doing a little of an exaggeration to say, you know how permitted it is? You could eat its mother, etc. Everything could be eaten. Also the father, also the mother, etc., etc. It's just an exaggeration. You're right. We don't really need to mention the mother at all. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Chayrim Omer Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. This is a similar brisa. Others say in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, Beitzah Tochal Hi V'Ima V'Afroach Uklipaso. It says when it comes to the egg, it can be eaten, the mother can be eaten, the chick can be eaten, its shell can be eaten. And so the Gemara says a similar idea. My klipaso. What does this brisa mean when it says you can eat the shell? Ilema klipa mamish. If it means you can literally eat the shell, klipa basachili is klipa something is the shell of an egg, something that you eat. El efroach biklipaso. So rather, what are you going to say it means? Maybe it means you can eat the chick when it's in the shell. But that's not true either. Adkan lo pligi Rabbanan led Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. There's only a machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov in regards to a chick. Elahecha de yatzel avir olam, in a situation where it already came out of the egg. Avalehecha de lo yatzel avir olam, but in a situation where it did not come out into the world, where it didn't come out of the egg, lo pligi, there is no machlokas. It's a problem to eat that anyway. So that can't be either what the brisa means. Rather, what must you say? When we say you could eat the chick and its shell, it's just an exaggeration. We just mean to say it's totally mutter. Hachanami here also. Tochal hi v'ima guzma. When it says hi v'ima, when it says the egg and its mother, it's just an exaggeration. Rashi over here explains, the Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov oser afrochim shelo niftechu eineim. The machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and the Rabbanan is regarding chicks that have not yet opened their eyes. There's a question over there whether you're allowed to eat those. Upligi Rabbanan oleh. There's machlokas between the Rabbanan again and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. The common ma'aseh la b'gemara. This is going to be brought later on. And so the Gemara said, but that can't be the case because everybody agrees if it didn't come out of the shell, it's certainly a problem. Guzman, exaggeration. You say something a little extra. In other words, even though it's something that's impossible, it's an exaggeration to make a point. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, we have the following machlokas amoroim, Shabbos v'yomtiv. Let's say you have a case where Shabbos is right next to Yontiv. Rav Amar nolda bazeh asura bazeh. Rav says if the egg is born, let's say again on Shabbos, it's going to be asur on Yontiv the next day. Rav Yochanan Amar, Rav Yochanan says no, nolda bazeh muteris bazeh. If it's born on Shabbos, it's still going to be mutter the next day on Yontiv. So the Gemara now says, Neima Kosava Rav Kedusha Achasi. Let us suggest that Rav holds that when you have Shabbos and Yontiv right next to each other, it's all one Kedusha. So it's all like one holiday, it's all like one Yontiv, so to speak, and that's why it's Asr the entire time. But the Gemara says that's not true. V'yamar Rav halacha karbo zikeinim v'aliba de Rabbi Eliezer damar shtei kedusha. And on the contrary, Rav says the halacha is like the four elders according to Rabbi Eliezer, that when you have a situation of Shabbos and Yontiv next to each other, it's actually two separate kedushas. As Rashi over here says, the nafkamina is you can make an erev on day 1 to the east and on day 2 to the west. It's considered two separate kedushas. So that can't be what's going on. So the Gemara instead says, what they're arguing about is the hachana of Rabbah. Again, Rabbah said earlier that hachana bidei shamayim, if something is prepared not actively by a person, but it's prepared by heaven, so to speak, then it's considered a problem of hachana. So in this case over here, if it's born on Shabbos, it's a question of, is that a preparation for the Yontiv? As Rashi over here says, hachana de Rabbah damar hachana bidei shamayim mitzvah. He says that if you have hachana b'dei shamayim, that could be a problem. Miyomtiv l'Shabbos. Let's say you're preparing from Yomtiv to Shabbos. The Seuda Shabbos boy hazmana miyom chol. Rabbah holds that the meal of Shabbos must be prepared on a weekday. Migzeres hakosef. That's Gzeres hakosef. So that's the issue over here. Is do we hold of hachana b'Rabbah? Hachana d'Rabbah kamiflagi. Rav isle hachana d'Rabbah derabba. Rav holds of hachana derabba. In other words, Rav holds that you have to prepare the Yom Tov meal or the Shabbos meal has to be prepared on a weekday. And therefore, if it's, let's say, born on Shabbos, then you can't eat it on Yom Tov because you're preparing Shabbos to Yom Tov. That's a problem. For Rabbi Yochanan, Leslie hachana derabba, and Rabbi Yochanan does not hold of hachana derabba. He holds that if it's hachana b'dei shamayim, the day before, is not going to pose any problem of hachana. The Gemara continues, Ketanoi, let us say this is a machlokas Tanoim, nolda b'Shabbos tochal b'Yom Tov. It says if the egg was laid on Shabbos, it can be eaten on Yom Tov the next day. B'Yom Tov tochal b'Shabbos, let's say it was laid on Yom Tov, it can be eaten on Shabbos if Shabbos is the next day. Rabbi Yehuda says, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, Adayin hi machlokas, no, it's still a machlokas. Shebei Shammai omrim tochal, Bei Shammai say it can be eaten, Bei Hillel lo say achel. Bei Hillel say it cannot be eaten. So you see this exact machlokas over here, a machlokas Tanoim, whether from Shabbos to Yom Tov or from Yom Tov to Shabbos, it's going to be a problem. Ushbezichne de Ravada Barava, the host of Ravada Barava, Havale Hanach Beitzah Yom Tov l'Shabbos. He had this exact case, a situation of eggs that were laid on Yom Tov, and the next day was going to be Shabbos. Also, Lekame came before him, Amar Lei said to him, Mai la'advinu ha'idna v'nechlinu l'machar. Are we allowed to roast it today in order to eat it tomorrow? So Amar Lei, so he said to him, "My daitach, what are you thinking over here? Rav Rav Yochanan, halachic Rav Yochanan. You're thinking that when it's a machlokas, Rav and Rav Yochanan, the halach is like Rav Yochanan. So if it was born on Yontiv, it should be mutter the next day on Shabbos. But he says, Afilu Rav Yochanan lo kasharia legoma lamachar. Even Rav Yochanan only was allowing that you can swallow it the next day raw. Avol biyome lo, but to move it around today, to roast it today, that's going to be a problem of muksa. Vatanya, and he says we have a proof from a Beitzah. Achas Beitzah shenolda b'Shabbos, v'achas Beitzah shenolda b'Yontiv. It says whether you have an egg that's born on Shabbos, whether it's born on Yontiv, ein metaltlano, so you can't move it around. Lo lechasos bo'es hakli, you can't use it to cover up a kli. V'lo lismoch bo karemita, not to support the legs of a bed. You see that its muksa can't be moved around. Again, certainly cannot be roasted. Ushbezichne de Rav Papa, the host of Rav Papa, v'yamrilon. Some people have a version. Hahu gavra do asal lekami de Rav Papa. It was just a person who came before Rav Papa. Havale hanach beitzah mishabbos liyontiv. Again, he had the same case. He had eggs that he wanted to use. They were born on Shabbos. He wanted to use them the next day on Yontiv. Asal lekami came before him. Amar Lei said to him, Ma'ulim mechlinu l'machar. What's the halacha? Can we eat these tomorrow? Amar Lei said to him, Zil ha'idn av'tol l'machar. He said, leave right now and come back tomorrow and ask me tomorrow. The Rav because Rav would never have the disseminator in front of him in order to issue halachic rulings. He wouldn't have from one yontiv to its friend because of an issue that of drunkenness. They used to get very drunk on yontiv. The point is, he didn't want to issue a ruling in a state of shichrus. Rashi over here says, meaning when it became yontiv, meaning after you actually ate. That's the point. What do you mean miyom tova? Means to say once you ate on yontiv and you became drunk. So he would not issue any rulings mishum shechrus because of drunkenness. The Rav Uruye hayamori b'drasha shelo. Rav used to issue halachic rulings in his drasha. Kinamina bekrisos v'shikar aser lahoro. Somebody who's drunk is not allowed to issue rulings. Tichsev yain v'shecher al teish. Tichsev lahoros as b'nei Yisrael. So the point is, Rav would not have the disseminator in front of him. He wouldn't give the shear because in his shear he issued halachic rulings, and you're not allowed to do that when you're drunk. So that's the same thing Rav Papa said. Rav Papa said, "Come back tomorrow," and now I cannot answer the question because we've already drunk today. So kiyas. Now, when the guy came back the next day, Amar Lei, he said to him, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Daled Amud Beis.